My name is Robert Clark, and I'm a World War II veteran. I can remember when they started taking people in for service, and they took the National Guard from Belfast. And we went when they marched to the train, and they probably only got 6 weeks training, or maybe less. I was in the Army infantry, and when I went into the infantry, I was squad leader of the first squad of the first platoon, and I probably got that assignment because I'd been in the State Guard before I went into service. Pretty fortunate to have the training. They give you training, anything an infantryman might shoot, like a rifle, pistol, bazooka, flamethrower, all of that, and mortars. And they went through training like overhead artillery. You'd advance and they'd lift the fire so that you'd be safe enough. When I went into training in the service, we were trained to go to Japan, and they intended to invade it. Think of all of those guys being on ships or landing ships. And Japan, of course, was a little different. They fought for the honor of the emperor, and they didn't seem to think of survival as much as we did. Of course, we knew the casualty list was going to be big, and as I recall, they estimated our losses might be 400,000, either injured or dead or whatever. And but the losses to the Japanese would be in excess of 1 million. And because their dedication was to fight for the emperor. Of course, most of the guys would hear stories about losses, like when they do over machine gun fire, and they'd fire over you, so you'd get used to the effect of it. And you'd be crawling on the ground, of course. They always had the story of the guy that was crawling along and came on this snake. He lifted his head, and the bullet hit him in the jawbone and pulled his jawbone out. And I believe he was from Eastport, I understood. I was in the infantry until the war was over. They dropped a bomb, and we had about 2 weeks of training to finish, and that was it. And we still figured we'd go to the Japan for our occupation service. When I returned from leave, they give you what they call delay en route. Got us in a shipment for Europe. We were sent to Europe. We thought that would be great. And of course, there was no airlifting then. It was all by ship. And it was in November, a real rough trip. But we made it. And when we got they landed in Le Havre. Pretty soon we was on a train, went into southern Germany. When I was there, it was pretty close to winter, and I had my first guard duty. I got light frostbite. I didn't have any gloves or anything. It didn't bother me, but years later, I got an infection in my hand and feet, and had it ever since. That morning, I got orders with another man. They signed us to be aides to the people there. They didn't have anybody that could type. When I went to headquarters, I was already on temporary duty in another town in Munich, other than Munich, and it was they sent to get me. When we got there, they took us into Munich, and I stayed there all the time I was in Europe. It was a good assignment. Third Army was Patton's outfit. Within a month, he had died in a vehicle accident. But I often wondered, what if they'd have left us with him instead of the people they kept? Of course, the war was over. The casualty list was usually pretty small. I think in the year that I was there, we probably lost 3 guys, 2 that I remember quite well. When that year was up, I, of course, came home and got a discharge. And I really wanted to kind of stay in. At one time, I'd only been in a very short time. I was being considered as a sergeant major because I eventually worked in the headquarters. They give you a choice. If they think you're still helpful to the service, they'll recommend you for continued service. And I signed up for the Army Reserve. My grandmother had a bad stroke, and I couldn't leave her. And they needed, in the household, they needed somebody to help with her. They had a school teacher down here who was a lieutenant in the National Guard. He told me that they'd like to have me sign over to the National Guard. They were always shot them in, and I did. When I was in the National Guard, I worked for them full-time. I worked at the Armory in Belfast. I don't know how many years. Finally wound up in Brewer. I resigned the job, and of course, by then I was a chief warrant officer. I'm glad I did everything I was supposed to do. And I wish that, from my viewpoint right now, I wished I'd saved out a lot of the photographs and stuff that I didn't save, because they become more important to you when you're not living the situation.